What would happen if we just called her up and said, I know that you're at the US Open right now, but if you could answer and just tell us your opinion on season 1.
Just give us a little nod about what to do, what to talk about next. Where you want season 2 to go, you know?
Because you are our guiding light, you know, Taylor. You do guide what we do.
Even though she says that we should find another guiding light. But she shines so bright.
What option do we have?
Anyway.
If you don't get that reference,
go listen, dear reader.
You need to go back to the Midnights episode of this podcast and listen to that.
Well, welcome to season 2.
We made it.
A Verified Therapist.
Yeah.
We're here.
Season 1 was the most lit.
We had a fun 7-8 months.
That's crazy.
We have some new stuff coming for you guys. Also, for those of you who don't know, we have an event scheduled. Very first Verified Therapist event. It is coming in March.
2025.
March 7th, 6:30. If you are local to Bowling Green, Kentucky, not Ohio.
I mean, if you are in Bowling Green, Ohio, and you want to drive down to Bowling Green, Kentucky, that's quite the drive, but we would love to have you.
But if you're a local here, you can come hang out with us because we're doing a Taylor Swift trivia night.
It's going to be so fun.
Yeah, we're going to give away some merch. We're going to make friendship bracelets. We're going to have a blast. It's
going to be so fun. We're going to play lots of Taylor Swift, obviously. Ask lots of Taylor Swift questions, obviously.
We have decor thought of in our heads right now. And we have ideas. Those ideas haven't come to fruition yet, but they're there.
But they're there.
We have until March.
We do, yeah. This is me reminding you that it's okay. We have some time. But we're excited.
Yeah, we're so excited. So I hope everybody can make it. We're going to be dressing in our favorite Taylor Swift era and potentially having some Taylor Swift themed drinks or cookies.
We're so excited. I'm just nervous because it's just nerve-wracking, but in a good way. Nervous in a good way.
Like nervous, excited. Like butterflies.
Yeah.
Like first day of school butterflies.
Yes. Tickets are $10, but we're not selling tickets just yet. If you want to figure out how to kind of RSVP, just send us a DM somewhere on Instagram or if you know us, send us a message and we can kind of help facilitate getting that RSVP done.
Yeah, because we'll need your email to be able to send out the ticket information.
Right.
Like we said, we're going to do stuff a little bit different this season. We got some great advice from people and some good constructive criticism, and I think we're going to put that into effect here.
Yeah, we're going to do the best that we can. Some things I was like, I don't know how realistic this is for us to change this quickly. So we're going to just do the best we can. We're going to do a little bit of restructuring how we do things. And we're going to kind of shift our focus a little bit more on season 2. I know in season 1 we focused a lot on pop culture aspect, which we love. And we're going to continue to pull in. But I think season 2 we were talking about trying to focus more on mental health and having more mental health centered topics with like psychoeducation, as well as, you know, how we've seen those topics kind of play out in the media and in the celebrities that we just love to follow.
There's going to be some interesting stuff, and I think we're going to try to educate you guys as much as we can without this being a continuing education credit.
Yeah. We're not going to like CEU it up, but also like educating on mental health and certain topics is kind of in our nature because this is what we do day in and day out. Some of that will be in there just because we're used to doing it so much.
We might turn on our therapist voice.
Yeah.
Or our presenter voice sometimes. Today, we are going to be talking mainly about domestic violence. And we just wanted to put a trigger warning for that right now. If you or someone you know, or this impacts you to the point where you can't listen to this and it's triggering for you, don't turn it off when we start talking about the main topic. But even in kind of like the opening stuff, I'm going to be mentioning some things about domestic violence. So if that's too heavy for you, maybe skip this episode.
And I know that there can be certain words that might seem really intense that we're saying, or things that are kind of like taboo to talk about. But at the same time, like I think that especially when it comes to something like this kind of topic, what we say and how we say it matters, and the words that we use matter. So if we, and I'll get more into that later on, but just know that like you might hear some kind of intense vocabulary in there, but I think that that's important when we're talking about something like this. And we encourage clients to kind of use words to reframe how things look, because I think sometimes, especially for anyone who's been in any kind of abusive relationship, we tend to wear rose-colored glasses sometimes and not really call things what they actually are, and a defense for our brain.
Before we get into the topic of domestic violence, we thought instead of doing highs and lows, we're going to do the self-care report. Report on here is an acronym. So we're going to pick one thing from that report to go over. Do you want to go first?
I think that we're both going to pick the same one by accident this week. I'm going to do obsessing, and I think you're also doing obsessing, but I think we're obsessing over two different things. Okay, Kate and I were actually just talking about this before we started recording. We both tend to get hyper fixated on things, so that's kind of where this is going to come in a little bit. You probably won't ever have us in a week that we're not obsessing over something. I have been on TikTok all weekend, and do you know who Nikocado Avocado is at all?
I do not.
I don't even know that's how you pronounce his name. So he was one of the first like mukbangers on YouTube. And so when he first started doing these mukbangs, he was like vegan and very healthy, and he would just kind of show what he was eating. Then at some point he kind of crossed over and began eating like really, really unhealthy things in really unhealthy portions. Okay. And so he gained obviously a lot of weight very quickly, became very unhealthy, and there was like a lot of obvious controversy around that, because it's like, how much is your health worth kind of topics, and people would bully him and were really mean to him on the internet, because the internet's not a kind place. He came out this weekend and he's lost 250 pounds, but he did not miss a beat with his videos, because he pre-recorded enough videos for 2 years. So he's been regularly posting for 2 years, and no one knew that he was losing weight, and then all of a sudden he pops up and he's lost 250 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
And he's calling it like a social experiment of, I don't really know. I haven't watched his whole video on it, so I don't know what the social experiment is. I can see a couple of different things of like, one, like we don't really know someone just because we know them and by what they're posting on social media. That obviously isn't always accurate. But two, like maybe like the negativity that kind of comes behind, like he was behind the scenes, was not spotted out, nothing, and lost all this weight, but people were still online last week, commenting and bullying him and things like that. So in one of his latest videos, he said like, I'm always 2 steps ahead, and then boom, he comes out and he's 250 pounds down, and it's wild.
Yeah. I mean, it does sound like he's literally 250 steps ahead of everybody.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Wow. I mean, good for him.
Right.
I think that sounds like a good social experiment of just like stop judging people, and like if someone's doing something and they enjoy doing it. I'm not a mukbang person.
Right.
I don't like hearing people eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
no.
Sorry. I watched like
the same way.
Sorry. I have like this, and all my friends know this. I have like this weird thing with salt.
Yeah.
So like, if I'm watching something, a lot of times with those mukbangs, like people, from what I've seen, they pick up a jar of salt.
Oh God. Listen, I don't do. Oh God.
No, I'm like, I'm not even exaggerating. Like when I say like it. Okay, I just grossed myself out. I need a second. Okay.
Oh my God, my obsessing triggered you.
Sorry. Oh God, I just gotta like think about stuff that's not that. Sorry, it like literally, like, do you see my eyes?
Yes, yes.
Is it? When people are around me, they have to like, and like are eating, they have to like warn me before they do that certain thing, because like it's a whole like visceral reaction. Right. I don't know why. Well,
I'm obviously anyway. I don't like struggle with that, but like I do not like extra of any of that on my food just because I don't like the way it tastes. So like I am not huge on mukbangs either. Like, there's a couple people that I'll follow that talk while they eat, but they're mainly talking. But I'm not like, you know, you have like there's apparently like a whole world on TikTok or maybe even YouTube too, I guess, of like feeders and people who like enjoy watching that. I'm not one of those people, but I just like thought it was so wild to see him like, I don't know, just like make this backlog of videos for 2 years, and then like he was continuing to get the bag.
Yeah, how do you create content for that long?
I don't know. Like, it was crazy. And like looking back on it, people were like looking at the expiration dates of the food or the milk that he was drinking or whatever, and like obviously like when you thought to line up the expiration date, it makes sense. But like now there's a whole bunch of people who are like having these theories on like if he hired someone else to pretend it was him and like all these like far-fetched things. And I'm like, no, I think he just really like got us. I think that's what happened.
How would that even work?
I don't know.
He hired someone else to do,
like, to look like him. I guess like they're saying like he hired somebody who looked like him and was overweight, and then now he's come out and it's like actually him. I don't think that's true. I think that it's literally just what he said. Like
everything has to be a conspiracy theory in the online world.
Literally,
that's really dangerous.
Yeah, and like he made millions of dollars because he was like the first mukbanger. So like he made millions of dollars off of this crazy stuff, and like it doesn't surprise me that he had the ability to like just kind of close off from the world, maybe get a personal trainer, someone to work on his food and lose that kind of weight. But that's just kind of impressive that he lost that much.
My question is, why is it called mukbang? Am I stupid for asking that?
No, I don't know that either. Do a quick Goog though, because that's a good question. I've never thought about that, but that's true.
I'm just like sitting here like wondering why it's called that. Like,
okay.
That doesn't.
So it's a combination of two Korean words which translate to eating and broadcasting.
Okay.
So it like would
so that makes sense.
Yeah. Like it translates, it said in English, to eat cast. So that makes sense.
Yeah. So how did they, I guess, like come up with that to use the Korean term? Like, is that like,
I wonder if like, because I've had people who have popped up on my page and I it's been Korean people. So I'm wondering if Korean, like it started in Korea. Yeah. But like, I just think it's crazy. I was a sociology major in my undergrad. So I think that any kind of social, anything like that is so like interesting. Just the way that our society responds to things. And I don't know, I just think it's cool. So I've just been like down the rabbit hole of Nikocado avocado. Yeah.
I'm going to have to look it up. Now that we've talked about it, like I'm sure it's going to come up on my TikTok feed.
Oh, 100%. Because your phone's listening. So what's your obsessing over? I know what your obsessing over is, but tell the people.
So I am obsessing over season 2 of Tell Me Lies. So this show came out in 2022. It's a book turned TV show on Hulu. And when I tell you, I was not expecting, when I watched the show a couple years ago, I was not expecting it to be like this. I didn't watch anything about it. Mm-hmm. I just like dove in blind. Mm-hmm. Which if you dive in blind, expect a lot of triggers.
I'll say, is that better like or worse to do you think?
Stuff. Depends on how you are when it comes to like, again, like domestic violence, drunk driving, mm-hmm. Deaths by drunk driving. Mm-hmm. Let's see, suicidal ideation, mm-hmm. just a lot of unhealthy relationships. And it is called Tell Me Lies. So like everyone lies.
Yeah.
Like unreal amount of lies going on here.
So true to the title. We love consistency.
So I dove in blind, mm-hmm. and it's essentially surrounding the two main characters, Steven and Lucy, and their kind of like unhealthy relationship dynamic. Like Lucy was a freshman when they met, and Steven was a junior. And kind of shows each of them, and it goes through all of their friend group too. Like there's a bunch of different people in the friend group, and kind of covers all of those dynamics. And there's a lot of things that happen. I won't spoil it for anyone. The end of last season was like jaw dropping, mm-hmm. to like the point of where I was pissed because season 2 hadn't even been announced.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what am I supposed to do? And then when it was announced, it was like 2024. And I was like, 2 years?
Yeah.
What? I can't. But it's been well worth the wait because they've dropped the first 2 episodes of season 2 this past week.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you.
Everybody's talking about it. Like, I've seen it all over my TikTok.
It's so jaw-dropping again. Like, everything that happens, you're just, like, on the edge of your seat. You're, like, because, I mean, season 1, it's, like, there's puzzle pieces, and, like, the puzzle gets partially put together. I want to say you get, like, one corner, because it is, like, 2 different parts of, like, you're also at an engagement party in 2015.
Yeah.
But it reflects back to when they were in college, like, 8 years previous.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you get 2 different sides, and you know there's a lot of things that ended up for these people to be at this engagement party, and you're like, what happened to get you guys here?
Right.
What the hell? It's crazy. Season 2 so far is a lot. I will say season 2, there is potentially a sexual assault that happened. It's neither confirmed or denied at this point, but from what it looks like from the outside, you would think going in like that was a sexual assault. So trigger warning for that. What I like about this show is the 2 main characters are dating in real life. Like, they met at the audition, and then, like, they said that they were, I don't know, they were together when they both got the phone call that they got the part.
Yeah.
And they were just like, oh, this works out perfect. But how they talk about Steven and Lucy is very mindful and very, like, respectful of, like, this is not healthy. No, you shouldn't want these 2 to be together. And no, this is not what a good relationship looks like. Because they are so back and forth. It is, like, a lot of Lucy covering up for Steven, but then it's also a lot of Steven, like, lying to Lucy, and Lucy lying to Steven. And, like, there's so much that goes into this. They're very aware of the unhealthy relationship dynamic, and they're going into this, like, don't romanticize these 2 people.
Yeah.
And they're, like, they're working really hard to not blur the lines between, because their name is Grace and Jackson. So they're like, we're not trying to blur the lines between Steven and Lucy and Grace and Jackson. We're not going to blur those lines.
I imagine that would be hard,
like,
too.
I saw an interview, and, like, she was talking about it, and she was like, hell no, this is not a good relationship. They shouldn't be together. And he goes, well, I kind of like Lucy and Steven. And she's like, are you saying that you like Lucy and Steven together, or are you saying you like Grace and Jackson together? And he was like, yeah, I like us together.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, like we have, like, a responsibility to not blur those lines.
I can only imagine, like, working with your significant other in the dynamic, like, in an unhealthy dynamic like that, and how that could get very difficult, like, mentally too, you know?
They said, like, they really work at their relationship for that. Like, they go, heard them talk of, like, they go and they fight on screen, and then they come home and they're just like, what's for dinner?
Yeah.
And, like, they were like, we kind of get all of our, like, built up, like, anger,
frustrations
out there, and then we're just like, okay, what's for dinner? And they talk about, like, if they do have, like, actual, like, arguments or anything, like, they talk about that stuff. And they're just like, we don't want to be that unhealthy couple that they play on screen. So I think it's, like, helping their relationship, it sounds like.
Yeah, maybe encouraging some communication early on.
Yeah, because those 2 do not communicate.
Yeah.
At all. I'm going to put a clip in here from the episode, and I think, like, it is a badass moment for Lucy of kind of, like, because last season you see Lucy kind of get steamrolled by Steven a lot, of kind of being like this girl just seeking approval and attention from this boy who is, like, kind of giving it, kind of not.
Yeah.
And, like, sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not. You never know when he's going to flip-flop. Which is it's very telling of what college relationships were like. It's essentially just 2 people, like, hurting, and they should not be in a relationship with each other, but they're too young to figure that out.
Right.
And be like, oh, we're not good for each other. So they just keep stringing each other along. And then this season, I see a lot of Lucy standing up for herself, which I'm like, girl, fucking get it. Like, say what you need to say, get it off your chest, be like, you're not going to drag me through the mud like you did last year.
We love a woman empowerment moment.
That's my thoughts. What I'm obsessing over this week.
I'm gonna have to watch it.
Be obsessing over it forever.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch it. I meant to watch it this weekend, but I just didn't. But I'm going to. So,
and Thomas Doherty is on this season, and if anyone knows me, that is like one of the loves of my life. He is one of my white boys of the month.
Yeah. So he's one to look out for.
I love him. So this is like completely off topic, but kind of on topic because we're talking about Thomas. So he's on the newest version of Gossip Girl.
Yeah.
Love him in that. He was also on The Descendants because he dated Dove Cameron forever. He also, I don't know, there's some kind of app that does this where like a bunch of actors read very like sensual, sexy like books and stuff. And he does one of those. And he has like this thick accent because I think he's Scottish. So it's like a super thick accent.
Yeah.
And it's like very deep. And I'm just like, love you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
He knows his audience for sure. Love it. He was also in that, oh my gosh, it was some vampire movie that came out. I can't think of what it was called, but I watched it a couple of years ago. It was so good.
I was gonna say, if it's not Twilight, I don't know it.
But it's also like unrealistic. It's like a vampire movie where like the girl decides that like she doesn't want to be with a vampire, so then she tries to like kill him and everything. And I was like, girl, just be a vampire. God.
I like how you're like, but it's not realistic in the movie about vampires.
Like, you get an opportunity handed to you on a fucking platter
to be a vampire,
to become a vampire and be married, live forever, and be married to this beautiful man.
Right. And
you just say, nah.
And I'm going to kill him. Actually.
His entire family, too.
Yeah.
No. So what? You have to drink people's blood? Oh my God.
If it tastes good to you, then, I mean, don't kill people for it, but you can be like the Colons and drink animal blood.
Exactly. Or you can do like the Vampire Diaries and get blood bags.
Yeah, from the hospital. Yeah.
You can find ways around killing people.
Right.
Jesus.
Ask the Salvatores. Well, one of them. Both of them eventually.
I was about to say both of them.
Both of them eventually.
Are pretty bad.
Yeah. Well, they kind of trade off. When one's having a hard time, the other one's like doing okay. And then like that one struggles and then the other one's doing okay.
We're talking about like Ripper Stefan.
Oh God.
And No Humanity Stefan.
Listen, you know my favorite storyline of the Vampire Diaries was? And if you ever watched the Vampire Diaries, like, you gotta be watching it because there's like 100 different storylines that you get in the whole show. But like, my favorite one was when Bonnie and Damon were in the whole other, like, they were supposed to die, and then they found Kai, and I loved that.
Prison world.
Yes.
I do too. So, okay, so I know Kai is like a very controversial topic because obviously he changed the whole trajectory of the Vampire Diaries.
Yeah.
But like, they also, Nina Dobrev was leaving, so they needed a storyline, so that wasn't really Kai's fault.
Right.
But I also think like this is going back to blurring the lines is because I'm like, am I blurring the lines because I love Kai and he's like such a good villain?
Right.
But like, also, do I love Chris Wood? Because I love Chris Wood. So I'm like, where's the line?
Where's the line?
But also, he is like a hilarious villain, and I'm glad that they brought him back.
Yeah.
At the last season, and then they brought him back on Legacies, and I remember my mom watched Legacies, and she's watched Legacies in the originals.
Yeah.
And she's like, who is this guy, and why does Alaric hate him so much? And I'm like,
because she's watching them out of order.
He killed his wife.
Yes.
His twin sister. And my mom was like, oh, that's Kai. Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Talked about him.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. That's Josie and Lizzie's mom.
Yeah.
He killed.
Listen, Kai gave me...
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Sorry to ruin the whole show. Kai gave me Chris Keller vibes. That's who Kai gave me. Like the villain that is just... Yeah, you just love them.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
All right. So here is where we're going to start talking about domestic violence. And we're going to start off with some psychoeducation on domestic violence. So kind of what goes into kind of the cycle of abuse, the will of power and control, how to kind of identify some warning signs. So like red flags in relationship. Later on, we're going to touch on some celebrities that have also been very open to talking about their experiences with domestic violence.
And also share some resources, because we want everyone to have resources if they or anyone that they know is in this situation that they can pass along. I think our society is doing a lot better too about discreetly providing resources for people. So like, I think that's pretty cool. Some of the things that some businesses and things are doing to kind of help that.
A lot of the resources too that are out there, which we'll go over more, but a lot of them have buttons that you can push, like on the corner. That's just like a little X, and it clears the history. So it's like you never even looked up this information, and it immediately closes out, and it just goes to the Google homepage.
I think it's important to know the red flags for sure, because no relationship starts off typically being obviously abusive, or it would be harder for people to stay if it started off that way.
And a lot of this information that I'm going to get, so this specific information comes from Love is Respect, which is another website that has an option at the bottom for you to call, chat, do a live chat, and you can also text Love Is to 22522. And there's also the little X button at the top of the screen. So if you do, we'll link all of this stuff in the description.
Yeah.
So if you ever want to go and look at it. But some things, you know, when I hear a relationship, someone talking about a relationship, and they're talking about it kind of being like this extremely like high feeling, like it's a whirlwind. They have been completely swept off their feet and everything just seems perfect with this person. Sometimes can be, I want to say that's a yellow flag for me. That kind of makes my guard go up to be like, okay,
right.
Let's go more into this.
We're hearing more now about like the term love bombing. And I don't think that all love bombing leads to domestic violence per se, but I think that all domestic violence has some sense of love bombing involved. So for anyone who doesn't know what love bombing is, it's kind of a newer term. And typically if like someone's love bombing you, they're like very affectionate, very like wanting to communicate all the time, promising you like this big future, like doing all those things and doing it very soon. And like Kate said, like this very kind of providing this intoxicating feeling, ultimately releasing that dopamine and oxytocin in the person's brain is really what it does.
Yeah. And a lot of times you'll get like flooded with compliments and you'll just be like, oh wow, like this is something different. Like especially if you've come from even a previous domestic violence situation, or a previous relationship or friendship or family relationship where it wasn't very giving in that regard, so you didn't really get a lot of words of affirmation. This person will kind of feed on that and kind of over compliment you. Right. And it is sometimes with love bombing difficult to kind of see like what is appropriate and what's not appropriate. But sometimes if you're feeling kind of overwhelmed with affection, that can be a red flag. Yeah. And specifically when the person doesn't take no for an answer. So this is something that you see a lot portrayed in movies and books. And one of our favorite movies, there's a perfect example of The Notebook. Like Ryan Gosling's character Noah would not take no for an answer. Right. And he literally risked his life. And we see that as, we've been seeing that as like portrayed as something very romantic, but not only was that dangerous for him, but Allie was on a date with someone else. Right. And she said no. Right. And she said no multiple times. And it wasn't really respecting her boundary. And I think that we're so conditioned to, and again, this is my sociology brain kind of coming out, but we're so conditioned and socialized to see these love bombing things and really like even like codependency things, like see those as romantic and normal and healthy, but they're not. Someone, like you said, not taking no for an answer, someone not respecting that boundary, that's not a sign of a healthy person.
again, not necessarily meaning that that's going to lead to domestic violence, but that's 100% like not a healthy start.
Like, I know we talked about kind of like the love bombing aspect of it too, of kind of like showering. I think on the other hand, like not just showering compliments, showering gifts as well. So like you say no to a date. We've seen this in movies multiple times. You say no to a date and then that person sends you flowers.
Yeah. Max Medina and Gilmore Girls showering Lorelai with all the flowers in her inn that she can't even see past them.
Because she said no to his, well, she didn't say no to his proposal.
Right.
She said, I need to think about this.
Yeah.
Which everyone has every right to think about. Like, a proposal is huge. You have every right to sit there and be like, do I want to marry this person? Or do I not? Especially because that relationship hadn't even lasted a year.
Right.
And they were, of course, she was going to be like, am I jumping too soon? You know? And that's okay to sit there and think. You have every right to have that boundary up.
Right.
But for him to kind of do that 1,000 Yellow Daisies and it be portrayed as something super romantic, because that was something that she had said in kind of like passing that like that would be like something super romantic for her. But it was kind of a coercion way to get her to say yes to him. She was like, oh, I can't say no now. This person just did this super romantic gesture. For me. And like all she was saying was like, hey, let's slow things down a little bit.
Yeah.
I love Max Medina. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of red flags with him.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, there's a lot of red flags with Lorelai too.
Yeah. But I also think that's kind of the point, like that kind of goes into our point though, that like, again, like movies and books and shows and even music set us up to have these big expectations when really like, what I'm learning in my own personal therapy is that like relationships are not supposed to be that heightened. Like a good healthy relationship is not supposed to like make you so sick with anxiety that you think is normal excitement, but really it's just a lot of anxiety, you know? And I've seen this thing that said like when all you've like, I don't know, it basically referred to like when you have any kind of childhood trauma or any kind of relationship trauma, like butterflies and red flags all feel the same. And I think that that's accurate, you know, like, especially if you have like any kind of childhood trauma that you're more susceptible to, you know, kind of, I don't want to say falling for sounds like a bad word. Like you're more susceptible to those highs and those lows in relationships, I guess. It's really hard to differentiate between like, this is something healthy and something good and something exciting. And this is my fight or flight response saying, something's wrong, you know?
And Sabrina Carpenter just released a wonderful album. Everyone should go listen to it.
No skips.
Short and sweet. No skips. But on there, she has a song that's called Lie to Girls. And in there, she says, like, basically, like, you don't have to lie to girls to kind of get what you want.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, we're going to lie to ourselves to keep you in our lives. So you don't even have to lie to us.
Yeah.
And I think that's like very telling of how women are taught to view relationships. Like, oh, well, we'll just continue to make excuses for him. He does this thing. We're just going to keep making excuses. And like you were talking about kind of like the butterfly feeling. She made that comment in there. Like, we love to mistake butterflies for cardiac arrest.
Right.
like we're actually like dying over here, but we're like, oh, it's butterflies.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's not supposed to feel like this.
Right. And I'm sure that like every woman, and I don't want to just say women because domestic violence happens to men as well, but like just I'm a woman and you're a woman, so we can speak from that perspective. But I'm sure that, I don't know that you haven't gone into statistics yet, but like 1 in every 4 women is going to experience domestic violence at some point in their life. And that's an underreported number, you know? So like, I'm sure that there's things that you can look back on relationships and not necessarily like say like that was a domestic violence relationship all the time, but say like, I mean, at least I should just speak for me. I can look back on that emotion and at the time be like, oh my God, that was so intoxicating to be in that. And now look back and I'm like, that was probably my gut being like, girl, get the hell out of that, you know?
So other things on there talked about is your partner acts differently when they're around you than everyone else. See that a lot. Partner is jealous of other people that you spend time with. So like that plays into like a lot of isolation too.
Yeah.
So kind of, and like a lot of times we see that like played off as like, no, they're not trying to isolate you. They're saying that, oh, this person isn't good for you.
Right. Or this person doesn't like me.
Like, yeah. This person doesn't like me. So I don't necessarily like want you to be like fed bad information about me that isn't true. A romantic relationship is supposed to be one relationship in your life. It's not supposed to be your whole life.
Right.
So like looking for those little signs of like, are you allowed to go and hang out with your friends on a Friday night? Or are they going to make a little comment about that? Or when one of your friends texts you, or like a person of the opposite sex texts you, or of the same sex, if it's, you know, a same sex relationship, looking for those different things of being like, are they getting mad that this person is communicating with me?
Right.
Kind of seeing that. And, you know, but like it goes into, which we'll talk about this in a second, but it goes into like that power and control over you.
Yeah.
Of like trying to control who you have in your life.
Yeah.
And it's never okay to just simply be around one person all the time.
Or to put like all of your, you know, I tell clients this, and I'll tell like, you know, people in substance use treatment this, like, you don't want to make everybody, like one person in your life responsible for all your support. You know, you don't want to do that in any sense, whether there's domestic violence or not, because it's like so much pressure to be just that one person, and you want to have different avenues of support in case something happens to that relationship. But these domestic violence relationships that are centered around power and control, they don't want you to rely on anybody else, because if you were to hear something and go along with that, they have a chance of losing that power of control. Or, you know, if you have any kind of other influence, then you're not posting them up on a pedestal that they want to be put on, you know?
Also, like in these relationships, sometimes you'll see that like this person is always agreeing with you. So like you guys aren't disagreeing on anything. Which is like a huge red flag, because like there is not one person in this world that you're going to agree with on everything.
Right.
And that could be potentially love bombing again. Like coming in and saying like, oh yeah, that's your favorite band. That's my favorite band too. You like, I like this TV show. Oh, I like this TV show too.
Right.
And then like come to find out later on, like you'll be like, ask them a question about the TV show, and like they're blank face because they've never heard it.
Right. Right.
They've never watched it. It can also be like happy couples do fight. They do have conflict, but there is such a thing as respectfully fighting. So like there is something that I talked about with a lot of people of like fair fighting rules.
Yeah.
I can like post that document too for you guys to look at. But like there is such a thing as fair fighting.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times it doesn't involve being disrespectful in any way. Right.
And conflict is a good thing. Like, conflict is a healthy thing, because like if we never had conflict, we would never, one, you know, open our perspective on things. We would never make any kind of changes. But two, conflict resolution can bring two people together closer in a relationship. So like conflict isn't inherently bad.
This is a big one. This goes back to like season 1 when I talked about my beef with Ted Mosby.
Yeah.
From How I Met Your Mother. Because that man did not let Robin rest.
Right.
Like, he love bombed the crap out of her, first of all. He wouldn't take no for an answer. He said, I love you within like the first 5 minutes of like their first date.
Right.
There were so many red flags. And so like the next part that is the red flag is committing too quickly. So like saying I love you like a day after knowing someone, that's a huge red flag. You don't know this person in and out. You don't know if you love them. I've also like dealt with clients or people in my life that have also experienced domestic violence say like, oh yeah, we got married in like this amount of days or like this amount of months. And you're like, ooh, that was a red flag.
Right.
To start off. Like that was very common back in, I want to say like, specifically around wartime. It seemed to be like super common. Like you meet this person and you fall in love and then like they go off to war and you only have this short amount of time together. So you get married. Right. That seemed to be like very common, but also like even just kind of back in the day and people, this is what I also want to say. Like we talk about domestic violence being super underreported. I don't even want to know what the statistics are for back in like, let's say like 1945.
Right. Oh yeah.
What the underreporting was going on. Or even like 1950, which was a few years after World War II. Yeah. There was a lot of men going through PTSD and women too, going through PTSD from that. So I don't even know like what that statistic would have looked like. Right. Because I just hear all the time, and I just saw this comment the other day and it really sent a rage in me of like, let's go back to the good old days when like women stayed married to men.
Okay, well
and they worked through everything.
Some things should not be worked through. Like, some things should not. Yes. If your partner is abusing you, that's something you can work through. Sorry, but it's not. Like,
and it's not your responsibility no matter what your partner has been through. So whether they have been through extensive trauma or they grew up in a home like this and they're just reflecting these behaviors, it's not your responsibility to get them help, make them change, and be there by their side while they make that change. Right. It's not your responsibility because you don't know if they're actually going to change and you're just keeping yourself in harm's way.
And this is where, like, as a therapist, I'm just going to pull back the curtain on this and, like, I'm going to preface this with, my friend Alexa says I'm queen of, I'm going to preface this. I'm prefacing everything. But I'm going to preface this with, like, we, as therapists, we don't leave our human shoes at the door. Like, we feel emotions and we are, like, have natural thoughts of our own that come through in the session. And, like, I never once have felt frustrated at a client who's in a domestic violence situation, but I felt frustrated at the situation because you get, like, you care so much about your client and their safety, and you honestly, as a therapist, get really worried and really scared for them. And it's just, it's so hard. Which, statistically, 70%, there's a 70% chance that a woman is going to be killed immediately after leaving a domestic violence situation. So, like, leaving is statistically the most dangerous thing that someone can do. So, like, we can obviously connect with the fear that comes with that. But it's like, I don't know. It's such, like, an epidemic, almost, that it's almost like it can feel very powerless to the people helping just as much as it can, like, the person involved. And it can be very frustrating for us to see because we're just like, we just want to fix it and we can't, you know?
Yeah. And there's also like that, and that's where like our own self-care and our own things of like having to leave it at the door, you know, like when we walk out of our office, like we have to really try to do everything we can to get it off our minds. But like sometimes it's really hard. Like specifically, like I know we both have worked with individuals going through domestic violence situations, and like I've had to talk to my own therapist about it because I started having dreams about those situations. And that is like what we call secondary PTSD as well. And I'm not experiencing it, but I'm hearing someone talk about it. So then that's when I know, like, okay, I need to go do a lot of self-care. So this is for all the therapists out there. Like that, when you know the signs of that, like self-care, talk to a therapist, take your medication, and also lean on your peers. So like we, as therapists, I can't go talk about this situation to my husband, but I can talk about it and kind of work through a lot of it, specifically if I have questions with you, because you are also a therapist.
Yeah.
And we can consult of like, hey, have you ever been in this situation? How did you talk to your client about this? What are some new things that maybe I can talk to my client about?
Right.
We can just kind of pass ideas back and forth in that sense.
Yeah.
But it's really difficult. And, you know, I talked to my supervisor. It can be a very heavy topic as therapists. And also, like, just for everyone to know out there, like, since we're talking about the psychoeducation, like, in the state of Kentucky, we cannot report domestic violence.
Right.
There used to be that we would have to report, but that was ending up a lot of people getting killed or a lot of people being severely hurt. So we cannot report that.
Yeah.
We can work with you if you want to report it with us. Like, we can be that supporting person for you, but we cannot report because the studies have shown that it's more dangerous for us to do that.
Right.
We can just give you all the resources that we can and give you all of this education and help you to the best that we can.
Right. And that's so hard. Like, again, we're human and we care about our clients. And there's sometimes that I literally just want to, like, burn the world down, you know, to keep my clients safe. You know, that's just human me talking. You have clients that come in and you see it not only in session, but you see it on their bodies when they come in. And it's so, you just want to, like, lock them in your office and never let them leave again, you know, just to know that they'll be safe. And so, just from a therapist perspective, it can get just very, like, it can get hard. And, like, I don't want to say that to invalidate, like, if it's hard for us, it's 100 times harder for the person in it, you know? So, like,
oh yeah, for sure.
Not saying that we have it hard, or, like, I'm saying that therapists anyone should feel bad for therapists. That's part of our job, but just a little bit of perspective from a therapist on that. Also, not saying that you shouldn't talk about it in therapy to be concerned about your therapist. Do not do that. Like, 100% bring it to your therapist, because as difficult as it is, we would much rather support you and it be difficult than not know about it.
Because we have our own therapist and our own ways of coping with the kind of, like, secondary trauma that comes with it. Yeah. So we're here for you. Like, we're leaving ourselves at the door. When you come to us to talk about this stuff, while it is hard for us to hear, that's like Autumn said, like, that's our human side coming out. But, like, we also know that we have a job to do, and that job is to protect you. Yeah. So we're going to do everything we can. Yeah. And if we send over tons of resources for you, we're doing it for a reason. Because we can't be the one to make that phone call for you. Right. Also, some other... Yeah. So this information...
I derailed this.
No. So this information is from the hotline.org, which is another website that has the X at the top to exit out of it. So this is common signs of abusive behavior in a partner. So telling you that you never do anything right, showing extreme jealousy of your friends or time spent away from them, preventing or discouraging you from spending time with others. That could be friends, family members, peers, whoever. Insulting, demeaning, or shaming you, especially in front of other people. Preventing you from making your own decisions about work or attending school. Controlling finances in the household without discussion, such as taking your money or refusing to provide money for necessary expenses. Pressuring you to have sex or perform sexual acts you're not comfortable with. Pressuring you to use drugs or alcohol. Intimidating you through threatening looks or actions. Insulting you or your parenting, or threatening harm or to take away your children or pets. Intimidating you with weapons like guns, knives, bats, mace. And destroying your belongings or your home. Going to the pressuring you to have sex or perform sexual acts you're not comfortable with. No is no. Right. Whether you're in a relationship with someone or not, you still have to provide consent. Right. And consent throughout. Not just consent at the beginning. Not just one time. Right. Throughout everything. You could have done one sexual act with that person, and then the next time they come to you to want to do that sexual act, you're like, no, I didn't like that. No,
Yeah.
And if they continue to pressure you to do that, that is sexual coercion. And that's not okay.
Yeah. Even if they're not like physically pressuring you, if it's just emotionally and verbally pressuring you, that's still not okay. Still abuse.
So also a lot of these resources that we're going to give you, like we're going to post them down there in the description, is going to have hotlines that are available 24/7. But I wanted to say specifically the hotline.org, I noticed on their website today, said that call times are waiting because they are experiencing an increase in call volume. I'm wondering if that is particularly because of what has been coming out in the news, particularly with like It Ends With Us.
Yeah.
And then also Nikki Bella and that relationship with her husband, which we still don't have any information about what really went down in that. Everything is very vague, and it's also not our business to know that. So unless either one of them feel comfortable coming out and talking about what happened, but right now it doesn't seem like they are. So like, not our business. But I'm wondering if like, because the media is a big power tool.
Oh yeah.
Like it's very powerful. So I'm wondering if people are seeing that and are wanting to come forward.
Yeah. And report
and wanting
more.
to talk about this more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or even just like I even tell people, like, if you have questions, if something is abusive or for whatever reason you don't feel comfortable enough to like say it out loud or anything, like you can always use the chat option and ask them questions. Like you can literally log onto the chat and be like, hey, is this abusive?
Yeah.
That this is happening?
Because these people are like trained in how to help.
I'm wondering what's causing the influx in phone calls. I'm wondering if that has anything to do with it.
It could be.
Could be.
You know, I know that we go through phases a lot, like depending on like our economy, depending on like our social world, those kinds of numbers fluctuate a lot. I know that I took a criminology class in college, and because I love, anybody who knows me knows that I love all things criminology, true crime and stuff, and violence among everybody tends to go up in the summer because it's hot, which sounds, it'd be like, well, how does that affect anything? But like, it's hot, everybody's out, people are more irritable, there's more things going on, kids are home from school, like there's a lot of change. So it makes people more irritable, but at the same time, we could sometimes see fluctuations in the wintertime because people are home more. People are getting snowed in with their abusers. And so it's like, it just kind of depends on the year and the season, you know, but we kind of see these ebbs and flows of reporting, not reporting. And like you said, with the media, that's a powerful thing too. So, you know, I think that we are seeing more people talk about domestic violence probably ever. And I think I've said this a couple episodes ago, but with the Me Too movement, I think the Me Too movement really brought a lot of things out and really pushed along the normalization of talking about things too.
I mean, the pandemic really opened a lot of doors, because that's another situation where a lot of people were quarantined with their abuser. They felt like there was no escape. Yeah.
And it caused a lot of like economic stress, which increases chances for domestic violence.
And I think like, since we're talking about like economic everything, like domestic violence doesn't discriminate against anyone. You can be of any gender, any sexuality, any financial class, any career, all of these things. And it can still happen. And in particular, there was a local bar here that was owned by a woman and used to frequent it a lot. The owner was really cool. She was so sweet. She was also kind of like, because it was a biker bar, so kind of like she was like a badass woman. And you like, honestly, like when you saw her and like all kinds of stuff, like, I mean, she was used to kicking people out of her bar. Like she didn't give a shit. She was kind of like, I mean, just a badass. Yeah. And back in 2017, she was killed by her husband. And like, it just kind of goes to show, like, even the people that you view as like some of the strongest, most badass people can be experiencing this at home.
Right. Well, and I think part of that is those rose-colored glasses that I think all of us tend to use a little bit in relationships at some point or another, but especially when it comes to these abusive relationships. And, like, the person tends to make excuses or reason or kind of be logical about why this happens, or they didn't really mean that, you know. The one thing that I've heard a lot is, like, they just kind of lost control. And I have to be like, well, they don't lose control in front of their parents or in front of other people, so what, like, that's not really a good reason. You know, they don't, if you lose control, you're not selecting who you're losing control in front of, you know. So
that goes to one of the red flags of, like, they act different in front of you than they do other people. I've heard similar things. I've heard that wasn't them. Their eyes just went black, and that I knew that wasn't them. This other version of them came out. And I'm like, well, it was still them.
Right. And that makes me think of, like when you say that, it makes me think of, like, so something that I always, and this is, again, therapy hack going on, I've been practicing because it's something that it just now got brought to my attention. If someone is using strangulation, the chances of them killing you goes up astronomically. So, like, that's a big red flag that in domestic violence trainings that we're told to kind of look out for if there's strangulation. And a lot of people say choking. I'm really working on not using that word because choking is something that you do when you choke on a piece of food. Strangling you is a more intentional act that is attempted murder. Right. And this is kind of like where I get to where I'm like, words are important, you know, because I just think it's important to differentiate between those two things, because I think choking sometimes doesn't really sound, I mean, it's severe. Obviously, nobody should be choking anybody else. But I think strangulation in our minds sets off the reality of how serious that is, you know?
When you say that, like, strangulation, I just think of that, like, horrific scene at the end of Catching Fire, like the Hunger Games, Catching Fire, when PETA, goes kind of, he's infected, or is it in Catching Fire, or is it in...
I think it's in Catching Fire.
No, it's in after the first part of the Mockingjay. So, yeah, because he comes back from being imprisoned with President Snow.
That's right, yeah.
Because he'd been injected with, like, Tracker Jacker venom and all that stuff. That was, like, really horrific. And, like, I just remember, like, watching that scene just, like, a few months ago, because I'll go on a kick of watching the franchise every few months. And I just, like, it was so traumatizing of, like, again, it's like you can say, like, that wasn't that person, but, like, that person still did that to you.
Right. And when you said that about the eyes, that's what it made me think of, because I was thinking of, like, women who have been strangled before. They talk about just, like, looking into the person's eyes, and it's just darkness, you know? And it just sounds absolutely terrifying. Like, I can't imagine anyone who goes through that, woman or man. Like, if someone's strangling you, that's a big scary red flag. Because I think it's like if I read that, like, because when you get strangled, you pass out 30 seconds longer than you passing out, and you die. And again, I'm not saying that to, like, be graphic. I'm just saying it to, like, emphasize, like,
that's the reality of that. The Will of Power and Control was created by the Domestic Abuse Intervention Project in Duluth, Minnesota. It describes the will as presuming, like, she, her pronouns as survivors, and then he, him pronouns for partners. But they also want to specify that was just kind of, like, the easiest way that they could go about doing this. So they want to say, like, domestic violence can happen for any gender, any sexuality. So this isn't vindicative to, like, one particular gender.
Right.
So it goes over kind of, like, the tactics that may be subtle over time, and then kind of increasingly get worse. So it goes over, like, physical and sexual violence, economic abuse, using male privilege using children, minimizing, denying, blaming, using isolation, emotional abuse, intimidation, coercion, and threats. So one thing that I've seen specifically with kind of like religious relationships is like the using male privilege. So like very religious relationships is kind of like, he's going to make you the servant.
Right.
He's going to be the one, which feeds into like the economic abuse, which is right above it, of like, he's going to be the provider of the household.
Right.
He's going to make all the big decisions, whether that comes to the kids, the money, housing, anything. He makes all the big decisions.
Right.
He is the master. And also, like, he's going to define, like, what roles. So, like, if you as a woman are a stay-at-home mom, for example, you've worked all day, you've spent all day with the kids, and he comes home from work, and he doesn't do anything to help out around the house or help with the kids or anything. And he uses that as, like, well, I worked all day. You should be doing X, Y, and Z. You should continue to take care of the kids. When in reality, we know being a stay-at-home parent, whether it's a dad or a mom, is a full-time fucking job.
Right.
And it's exhausting. Especially if you have, like, toddlers.
Right.
Have you been around a fucking toddler?
Yeah.
That thing never stops moving.
Or
like,
talking.
It's everywhere.
Or talking.
Yeah. Or grabbing things, like grabby hands. I just think of like those videos of those kids, like where parents are like baking with their kids and the toddler just like grabs the butter, like fistful of butter.
Yeah.
Or like grabs the cake and just
like
you're on guard 24/7 while trying to clean the house, while trying to make food, while trying to bathe.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of things that go into to being a stay-at-home parent. That's exhausting. It's not you sitting on your ass all day.
Right.
Like there's a lot of things that go into it. So like using that privilege of like, I'm the master of this castle. So like the typical like joke that everyone uses, like go make me a sandwich.
Oh, yeah.
The Harrison Butker of the world.
Ooh, Harrison Buckner. Harrison, when I catch you. Well, and I say, but like, we say that, like, and we're very much like, you know, barking a lot, but also we also recognize, like Kate said earlier, like it can happen to anyone. So don't misconstrue our words with thinking that we don't think that it could happen to us.
So I want to jump into kind of like the celebrities that have been very open to talking about domestic violence. We'll talk about Melissa Benoist. She played Supergirl on the CW, and she is now married to the wonderful Chris Wood, which we talked about, who played Kai. Because he was also, you know, we talked about CW characters. They just bounce around everywhere.
They're everywhere.
He also was on Supergirl with her. But during the time that she was on Supergirl, like in the earlier years, she was in a relationship with someone he's decently known. And they had been together for years at this point. I think that they were together for about 5 years. From what I remember seeing. She went on Instagram and posted a video back in 2019 talking about her experience with domestic violence and that relationship being abusive. So we'll link that video. It's really powerful if you want to listen to her talk about it. I'm also going to post another video that she kind of reflects back on it almost a year after she posted it. She talked about it on her YouTube channel of just kind of like reflecting on the space that she was in when she posted it and then now, and kind of like talking about how she has worked through a lot of the trauma that has come with that. She talks about kind of like the beginning of the relationship. There was those warning signs that we talked about. So the extreme jealousy, didn't want her to go out, started controlling like, oh, you shouldn't wear that. Maybe you don't look too good in that. Kind of like those little subtle things to try to control what she was wearing as well. And then it always starts off slow. It's kind of a slow, gradual build up. Like, especially when it comes to the physical things, like the physical things could be something super small and then it turns into something even bigger, which is exactly what happened here. She says like the first physical argument that they got into, he threw a smoothie at her and she just kind of like brushed it off. And then there was like she talks about it being like a ritual of like, he would do these like horrific things to her, and then he would carry her to the bathtub and put her in the bathtub and then be crying and apologizing, saying it's never going to happen again. I don't know why I just get so mad and I can't stop myself. I can't control myself. All of those things. And then when she would pull the drain plug out, like the fight and the argument would go down the drain. And she was like, it was a very like ritual thing. Like when the drain stopper was pulled out, the fight was done and over with, and there was no talking about it again.
Yeah.
She was constantly like making excuses for him, like lying to everyone about him. And then there was the big incident that happened. I remember that, like, her talking about this because that was in the days when I was huge on CW shows. I mean, still am. But I was watching Supergirl like no other. And I remember watching this interview and being like, oh my gosh, that's what happened to you. Like, that's crazy. Oh my God. But she went on Jimmy Fallon after this incident, and I'll talk about that in a second, and said that she tripped, fell into a potted plant, and hit her eye. And she said this on Jimmy Fallon. It was just like, oh, it was a huge accident and everything. And then when she came out in 2019, she said, but this is what really happened. She said he threw his iPhone at her and it hit her so hard, it tore her iris, nearly ruptured her eyeball, lacerated her skin, broke her nose, her eye swelled shut, and her lips swelled. And she still to this day suffers from the effects of that. So like she still has blurry vision. She can't really see that well at night out of that eye. Like it was pretty severe. And she said like that changed her because that was where obviously she's someone in the spotlight. And she's on a TV show. She can't just like go to the hospital. Yeah. And kind of be like, oh, okay, this is what happened, and then go home. Like she has makeup artists. She has a whole crew. She was on the TV show, like she was filming. So like she had to be like, hey, this happened. Like, how do we work around this? Because obviously she plays Supergirl. And for those of you who don't know the lore of Supergirl, like she doesn't get hurt. Right. So she can't have a visible injury on her and play this character. So it was a lot of like phone calls. She said she was interviewed by the police. They stuck to the potted plant story, both of them. She said he was asked to leave. The police asked her what really happened. She stuck to the potted plant. So lying to the police, lying to everyone around her of like what really happened. And then she had a friend come up to her and she said that this friend saved her life and was just like, what is really going on? Like, you can trust me. Just tell me what's happening. She said that, like, having that conversation was, like, the turning point. That was just like, oh, I gotta get out. Like, this is not okay. Wow. It was kind of like, yeah. Because, like, she said, like, the same ritual was happened with this. Like, she carried her to the bathtub. And then, like, they realized, like, oh, this one's not going to wash down the drain. Like, she needs medical attention. Like, this is serious.
Such a powerful story.
And to hear her talk about it and be like, and also on the other hand, to see her now in a healthy relationship. And she has like, I think her son is like 4 or 5 now that she has with Chris Wood. Like, just to see them like happy and thriving and just being like using her as an inspiration of like, you don't have to stay. Right. Because it's not gonna get better. Yeah. It doesn't get better.
It doesn't. And
no matter how many times they say that they're going to change, they're going to get help, they're not going to.
Right. And it's like,
and even if they do, it's not your responsibility.
And I was going to say that, like, I know that, like, it's our job to kind of have hope in that. And there is counseling that is geared towards helping people who are abusive. But, like, I would almost venture to say that, like, my recommendation is that person doesn't need to be in a relationship while that treatment's happening. Even if that's happening, even if that person gets help and does change, not saying it's not possible, but it would be very difficult to erase all that trauma and just kind of move on, you know? Doesn't mean that you need to stick around for it.
Another person that I wanted to talk about that experienced domestic violence that I remember talking about, because I was a big fan of hers back in the day, is Jasmine Villegas. I don't know if you know who that is.
Tell me who it is. I might know.
So she was in Justin Bieber's baby video. So she dated him briefly before he dated Selena Gomez. She also opened for him, and I got to see her. I actually got to meet her. Yeah. Which was really cool back in 2010. I always loved her music back in the day. Like, it was a fun time. And she was just like a small artist that like absolutely loved to watch. You know, those like artists that you like to like gatekeep forever. Yeah. That you don't ever want to tell the world about. That was mine back then. She also had like a YouTube channel. So like she did a lot of vlogs, and she did a lot of like fun things like with her friends and everything. And so in 2012, she was in a relationship. So she was about 19. She came out with this song that was titled Didn't Mean It. And I was like, So it like premiered and everything, and I watched it, and I was like, whoa. That was not what I was like expecting. But she talked about it like the music video at the beginning. You see her sitting in front of this, and then her boyfriend comes in and smacks her across the face and then drags her by her hair out of the room. But I was just like, what happened? Because I knew that her and this guy had broken up. Obviously, she didn't talk about what happened. So then after this, she started talking about domestic violence, and specifically like adolescents and teens that have experienced domestic violence, because that's not really talked about either. Yeah. And I actually wrote a paper in my adolescent psych class in undergrad talking about how detrimental adolescent relationships are. And it's because, let's look at the statistics of this. 15 million high school students experience physical abuse from a dating partner. 1 in 3 adolescents have experienced physical, verbal, sexual abuse from a dating partner. And only 33% of teens report it. Yeah. So like, no one is also talking about that these kids that are in relationships are also experiencing that. And like, you see it more frequently, to kind of go to my paper, but like, a lot of what I talked about was kind of like the lack of emotional regulation skills that we have as adolescents too, plays a huge part in that. Right. So a lot of those like up and down roller coaster of emotions and hormones and everything plays into that even more. Right. And also if like kids are seeing it happen in their house, like it's literally happening. It's like, it's not 20 years from now, like you're remembering and reflecting back on it. Like it's literally like happening in live time for you. And you're thinking that that's completely normal. Also in the music video, like the entire music video is her trying to leave this situation. And in the end, she does get out, but like you can see it, like it gradually gets worse. And I'm going to like post the link to the YouTube video if you guys wanted to watch the video, but it is a big trigger warning, because there is a trigger warning at the beginning of the music video. Yeah. But I was just kind of like, whoa, I was not expecting, I just wasn't expecting that. Right. And how open she has been since then of talking about domestic violence and being such a huge advocate for specifically teens of domestic violence. And during that time she was talking with, where I got a lot of the things that she talked about was nomore.org. And she worked with them, and she posted so many resources. I remember just like going through and seeing how many resources this girl posted of like, if you're experiencing this, like this is where you text. Yeah. Like if you're experiencing this is the phone number that you can call. If you wanted to DM me and talk to me about this, it's completely open for you to come and talk to me about this. Like, she was doing her due diligence while not just like putting out this song and this music video and then being like, okay, it's out there. Right. Here's my story one time. She was out there like putting in the groundwork to make something known that's like Yeah, like people don't really like to talk about it. Like specifically like adolescent domestic violence. Like it's not really talked about.
Yeah, because it's mainly like thought of as something that's like an adult thing, you know, but it's not, you know, and like you said, like kids, the main reason that we see kids, like I shouldn't say kids, teenagers experience like suicidal thoughts and stuff like that is because of like relationships, because, you know, just developmentally, that's the most important, their peer groups are the most important things to them at that point. And so like when those are turbulent and detrimental, like it's very difficult for teens to cope. And like you said, they don't have the emotional regulation skills to always cope with that. And sometimes that comes out in violence towards their dating partner.
Or even like going to like verbal and emotional. I don't think that kids are also like educated enough to know what that looks like. They're, you know, like a lot of times like they're thinking like they're saying something disrespectful and it's going to be funny to like their classmates, but like it's doing damage to people.
Right.
And like growing up and looking back at like even like some things that like, I mean, we're all, I feel like we've all done this. Like been disrespectful in relationships, specifically when we were kids.
Yeah.
Of just kind of like being like, oh, haha, this is going to be a funny thing that like we joke about with our friends. But then growing up, you look back and you're like, whoa, that was not okay.
Right.
So when you're in a domestic violence situation and you come to a therapist and you talk to us about it, most of the time we're going to do what we call like a safety plan with you. And a safety plan pretty much is just kind of like how to make you feel safe when you're in this abusive relationship or you're preparing to leave the relationship, or even like what's going to happen after you leave the relationship.
Right.
It's a lot of times going to be like, who do you have in your support system? So like, who can you go to talk about this? We're going to give you tons of coping skills.
Yeah.
And then we're also going to give you tons of resources, and specifically resources locally to you. So like we're here in Bowling Green, so we're going to give you the information for local domestic violence shelters that are here and local police information.
Yeah.
And also give you some, in this, there's a lot of information about how to file for an EPO.
Yeah.
And also file for a DVO. But a lot of times, specifically in Kentucky, I don't know if you've run into this, like you have to file an EPO.
Yeah.
And then it can eventually go into a DVO.
Yeah, you have to like go to court and kind of explain that. I know that too, with Bowling Green and the surrounding counties, we have brass, and no one knows. I mean, obviously people know, but like it's not knowledge to even us, like where brass is. When you go to like brass, like you don't know that, like there's not an address for brass. They kind of go over how to get a client there and everything like that. So I just want to throw that out there. Like when you go to these shelters, typically they're discreet enough to where like I've had clients who've been like, well, where is it? And I'm like, I have no idea. I have no clue where it is, but it's somewhere safe. So
like
that way
they don't give us an address.
No.
I remember even like for internship stuff, like when Brass came to talk to us about, you know, like potential internship there.
Right.
They didn't give an address. Like their cards, I still have their cards, and it has the phone number and an email address, but it doesn't have the address.
Right.
Which is protection and safety for people who need to go to Brass.
Right. And they also accept kids.
Yes. Yes. So specifically on the hotline.org, there is a section on it that talks about safety plans, and it goes through like safety planning while living with an abusive partner, safety planning with children, safety planning during pregnancy, safety planning with pets. And pregnancy is the second most dangerous time in an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of misconstrued information about that, of like people specifically in the abusive relationships being like, well, if I get pregnant, then he can't hurt me because he's not going to hurt our kid.
Yeah.
And that is not true.
Right.
That is not true. Let's look at Lacey Peterson.
Yeah.
And actually, Scott Peterson is guilty,
then you got another thing coming, and we'll talk about it on another podcast. But women, actually, I told you this, like, I think it was last week when I was watching her documentary, is that domestic violence is the leading cause of death for pregnant women. Intimate partner violence.
I'm going to go through this really quick. So, safety planning while living with an abusive partner. So, if you are currently living with an abusive partner, this is some steps you can take. So, identifying your partner's use and level of force so you can assess the physical danger to yourself or others before it occurs. Identify safe areas in your residence that always has a pathway to an exit. So, always make sure that there is an exit, that you are closest to the exit, not that person that is abusing you. Be away from any weapons. If arguments occur, try to move the weapons out of the areas before it escalates. Have safe numbers. So the hotline, which is the hotline is 800-799-SAFE. You can also have numbers to your friends, family, and also it says know where the nearest public phone is located, which there's not a lot of public phones out there. So just make sure you always have your phone. Make sure it's always charged up too. And always make sure you're in a place that has service. So create several plausible reasons for leaving the house at different times of day and night. So this could be multiple trips to the grocery store, spending time with friends, staying at work longer. Find unnecessary errands to complete to kind of get you out of the house. If possible, practice how to get out safely, including with others who may be living in the residence, whether that's kids, pets, elderly parents, whoever. Also, a big one is document the abusive behavior, which is going to help you build a case and a plan for what to do if your partner does eventually find out, or if you go to file that EPO or that DVO. Create like timestamps on that, screenshots, keep every message. If you can record safely, that's a very big if. If it's safe and you feel it's safe to do that, do it if you can. But that is very dangerous to do, I will say.
All of these, keep in mind the safety risk of it.
Yes. Because, I mean, there is a lot of safety risk in documenting as well. Because your partner could find that. If possible, keep guns and knives locked away. Be mindful of how clothing or jewelry can be used to physically harm you. So if you're going back to kind of the strangulation, so if your partner has put their hands around your neck, avoid wearing scarves or jewelry. Back your car into your driveway when you park at home and keep it fueled. So keep the driver's door unlocked with the rest of the doors locked if needed, if that's possible. Some of these newer cars, that's not really possible. But I always say if you do have to run out to your car, get in your car, immediately lock the doors. And also seriously make sure your car is fueled. If you are in this situation, make sure you have at least half a tank of gas in your car, if possible. And then if violence is unavoidable, make yourself as small as possible. Move to a corner, curl into a ball, protect your face, and have your arms around your head with your fingers entwined. The big thing is talking to people around you about what's going on. So letting trusted friends know what's going on, neighbors, family members, and develop a sign, some kind of signal for if you need help. I feel like I've seen this in a movie or a TV show or something of like this woman gave a signal to her neighbor of like if she shined like a flashlight.
A certain way.
Call the police. Like call the police. There's also like, I know people have seen like the ordering pizza, calling 911 and acting like you're ordering pizza. Right. That's a good one. I highly suggest watching. I think the show is called 911. That has talked about that. Talking to others about how to get help. So instruct them to not get involved. Like if there's kids or roommates or anything, not to get involved, not in between you, because that could end up with them being hurt. And then work with them to establish a mutual signal if they should get help or leave the house. These are all of these documents are going to be posted in the show note, remember there is that red X on the side if needed.
And it does take it away from your history. So even if they pull up the history, they can't see that you were on that. I just, like, when it comes to safety planning, I know that we don't have time to get into, like, the leaving part, but just making sure that, like, finance-wise, phone-wise, like, when you're planning on leaving, you know, finding ways that you can, like, stash up money on your, you know, to have on your own, making sure your phone is charged. So just, like, you know, sometimes having an extra phone hidden somewhere. So just, like, these ways that, like, we don't necessarily have to think about when we're just living our daily life and we're not in that situation, but just all these little things, making sure that you have air in your tires, you know, like these small things that could slow you down, which I'm sure that safety planning site has them, but just being mindful of that.
Like pet leashes by the door, or really at like any exit. Having a pet leash, having pet carriers, even like going ahead and loading pet carriers in your car, right? Like if needed. I always say, like, money wise, if you can and you're able to save money, like taking that money and giving it to a trusted person. So if you have a trusted family member, coworker, neighbor, whoever in your life, like allowing them to keep that, or even just having like a super safe place that might not even be in your house in particular, in case you do have to do a quick getaway, having it somewhere else. Preferably, honestly, not in your house and risk it getting found. I think that the big thing is that you are not alone. This happens every day. Yeah. And there are people that are here to support you and help you. We are also, like, as therapists, like, we're here for you every step of the way too. Yeah. You know, when you're ready to talk about, like, the trauma from that too, we have the skills and capability to do that. Right. So, a very heavy topic, but going into our intentions of the week to kind of round it out. My intention of the week is, this is my birthday week. So, yay! Woot woot. I'll be 28 in 1 week from today, exactly. But I'm also going to a chaperone event on Saturday. That'll be so fun. With my good friend Courtney. We're packing up and going out. I don't know, so we're packing up like it. We live an hour from Nashville. We're not staying the night anywhere. Yeah, it's going to be a fun night. And it's with my favorite radio show, 107.5 The River in Nashville. We love 107.5. Hopefully I get to hang out with some of those people that I met last year at the Taylor Swift concert. Yeah. It'll be fun. Yeah, that's just my intention, is to enjoy my birthday week and make it as fun as possible. Yeah, it'll be great. You'll have a great week. Having a full-time job. Yeah, that does kind of impede on our life sometimes. My intention is I have got to go to the doctor. So even if I don't go this week, I have got to make an appointment. I know that's been my intention like 45 times. But, like, if y'all hear my voice right now, my throat is not hurting. And so I think that there's something wrong that we really have to go to the doctor for now. So we're freaked out enough. Attention's gotten. We're going to the doctor. So that's my intention, is to just make an appointment to go. Yeah, something's going on. So we got to figure that out. Jiggy. Jiggy, are you mad? What's going on? Hey, talk to me. Jiggy. Okay, he's done. Could you hear him? No. Okay. Jiggy. I heard that. About it. Yeah. He's like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go public with my pain right now. So everybody enjoy their week. We're also doing a different schedule. So we're doing 2 episodes per month. Sorry about the change, but we also have full-time jobs. So. Yeah. Life has been crazy. So we just found that this works better. So we'll catch you in 2 weeks, but we'll be active on the social medias. So we'll have plenty of stuff for you for the next couple weeks. Yeah. Well, I hope you enjoyed first episode of season 2. Woo. Heavy topic, but a very important topic. So that's what we're here for. So see you in 2 weeks. All right. Love you. Bye. Bye.